This folding table is an old design. It's traditionally made with dowels at the pivot points. I used bolts instead, and it works like this. There's a nice carrying handle. And it's quite solid when it's set. So I'll show you how to make that. The materials required to make one of these tables are 4 legs, 4 of these cross pieces that go there, 4 pieces for the top, and 2 brace pieces to go here, 1 dowel that goes there, and on the hardware side there's 4 1-inch bolts. These are truss head bolts, 2 1.5-inch bolts, 6 T-nuts that'll receive those bolts. These washers are optional. They could go between the 2 pieces of wood just so you get a nicer pivot. And then some LocTite, which I use on the bolts so that they don't loosen. And finally 16 2-inch wood screws. It's a good idea to collect the hardware before you cut out the pieces, because you may want to make some adjustments to these dimensions. Since I'll be drilling a lot of holes, I've clamped the fence to the drill press table. I've got a scrap of material the same width as the others. A way to check that the fence is in the right position is to drill through from one side, then flip over, and if the drill will come in without any binding or deflection, then you're at the center. Then I clamped a stop block onto the fence so that every piece I drill will be the same distance from the end, a little more than 3/4 of an inch, 13/16. That'll allow me to cut a radius around here and sand some off with a belt sander. 2 of the leg pieces will be counterbored at the end to accept the truss head screws, and I'll use a 5/8 diameter bit, and I'll experiment on the scrap piece of wood to get the right amount of penetration in. Now I've locked the drill press in place, and I can with confidence drill the pieces the same. And that's very handy if you're making several tables at once, which is what I am doing. Then I'll complete the hole with a 1/4-inch bit. I set the stop on the drill so that it doesn't go all the way through, and I'll complete it from the other side, and that way I avoid tear out. I've got a clean hole on both sides, and there the bolt will go in nicely. The other 2 legs get a 3/4-inch counter bore to receive the T-nut, and when I've got that to the right depth, then I lock in the drill press, and I can do the other piece exactly the same. And these holes are completed with a 5/16 because that is the outside diameter of the barrel. And the last step for this hole is to cut a bevel with a countersink to take care of that little rounded edge there. These support pieces are the same. Half of them get drilled for the bolt, the other half get drilled for the T-nut. And finally the legs need a hole around the middle, actually 11 inches from the end to the center of the hole. I've moved the stop block over so that I can drill at the point 11 inches from the end that has the hole in it. The 2 leg pieces that were set up to take a T-nut, you flip that over, drill from the opposite side to take a bolt. So that's the 5/8 bit. The 2 legs that were designed to receive a bolt, they get a T-nut on the opposite side, so I flip that over and counter bore with a 3/4-inch bit. Take a close look at these pieces, because if they're not right, it won't work. So on the legs, 2 of them have the T-nuts at the end, 2 in the middle, and then on the flip side they've got the counter bores in the other holes. On these pieces I've got the countersinks for the screws all there, and then 2 of them have the T-nuts on the end, and you notice those are mirror images of each other. And then on these pair they have the counter bores, and again mirror images of each other. So if you get that right, it'll all assemble correctly. The dowel needs a hole drilled in each end, so I made this fixture to support the dowel, keep it vertical and keep it from spinning. I drilled to a depth of 1/2 inch to accommodate the amount of bolt projecting. These dowels go into holes here, and that keeps the gap in this piece the same as the other gaps. And it also creates some stability for the table. To drill the holes that the dowels will be glued into, I've clamped a fence to the drill press table, and then I'm going to use a scrap of the same material. So there it is as I drilled it. Then if I flip it around, pretty close, and also in appearance it looks good. And I've set a stop so that I go 2 inches from the end. That's just an arbitrary thing, but I want to be consistent. And I think I'll drill to a depth of 3/4 inch so that the dowel sits in very straight. On the mating piece, I'll drill just to a depth of 1/4 inch. Then I'll just temporarily place the mating piece on so that keeps the dowels lined up proper. And then when that glue is dry, I'll trim the dowels off to get the desired spacing between the boards, which in my case is a 1/4 inch. That will allow the dowel to enter easily into the mating piece. There's the top, upside down. I've got 1/4 inch spacers here, and I've got it set on a square so that it doesn't get skewed. I've assembled each half, short bolts here and the long bolt. Then the dowel just fits loosely into those bolts, keeping the top squared up, and then, positioning this whole thing square on the top and with these even. And then we'll put 2 screws here, 2 screws here, same on the other side. And over here, 2 screws here, 2 screws here, same on the other side. And what that'll do is pull the 2 top pieces together. And there's my marks where I'll drill. I'm making a few of these tables at once, so I use the reference piece that I marked, set a stop, and then I can drill them all the same. And I've got this fence set up on the table so that I keep everything vertical to get the hole going straight through. I drilled and countersunk the holes, and I want to now orient this thing correctly, but a lot of stuff is sort of flopping around. So I'll put a piece of wood in here the same thickness as this, put a washer on each side because I've got washers between each bolt. Do the same on the other 4 corners. So I'm getting it squared up on the top, partly by feel and partly by sight. And now because I got those spacers in there, I can clamp the whole structure. And I've just suspended a spacer in here the same length as this dowel that's held by the 2 bolts, but this isn't held other than by the pressure of the clamp. So that lines everything up parallel and square. I found another clamp squeezing the top pieces together was quite handy so that they don't drift apart. Now I can mark the screw hole locations by just starting each of those screws. I'm going to mark these because orientation is important. Pilot holes with the drill press set to not go all the way through. The pilot holes are all drilled, so now we can screw the thing on. The next step is I put the table on a flat surface, and the flattest surface I got is the table saw. Make sure it's all settled in, and then draw these lines where I'll cut off the feet at an angle. Now to conveniently cut those off on the table saw or chop saw, I have to undo these bolts and get the pieces separated. What I don't have to do is unscrew the tabletop from the horizontal pieces, so it's not so bad. And this angle measures 37 degrees. And there we are back together with the feet cut off to give a nice rest on the floor. One last thing to do is remove each of the 6 bolts one at a time. Apply a bit of blue LocTite to the threads, reinsert, tighten it, and then back off 1/4 turn. After 24 hours the LocTite is dry and it's then safe to move the joints. So I'm going to glue the braces on, and on each side they're glued to the edge that has the point. That's important, otherwise it won't fold. And I've just got a spacer here, so I'm putting glue on the leg that has the point. When the glue dries, remove the clamp, and we're done.